Is there something that Jesus is driving at in this passage that we need to see in a fresh light? And I believe there is. You know, we don't have benefit of being there with Jesus and the teaching, and we read these things and they're broken down into verses and chapters, and sometimes we don't understand that part of two chapters were one conversation. And indeed, that is the case in this passage. We have a change of chapter, but we have the same cast of characters that Jesus is talking to. And indeed, he is talking to the Pharisees, the religious, organized church leaders of the day, and they are calling into question a man that had been excommunicated from the church because Jesus had healed him and broke one of their religious rules that occurred on the Sabbath. Can you imagine becoming so legalistic that we actually quench the working of the Holy Spirit and the will of God? And yet, institutional religion, which is about rules and not about relationship, will do that, has done that, and is still doing that today. And it's sad. It's a sad, sad discourse on the institutional church. And so you have to understand who Jesus is talking to in order to understand the context of these parables that he gives. And so he says, I want to say to you Pharisees, to you churchmen, you professionals, I want to say to you something that's important. Jesus is saying, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way. These are incredibly important words if we are to truly understand the true order of the sheepfold. Jesus is saying the sheepfold has an order. It has an order of entrance. It has an order of a gatekeeper. There is an order by which you go in. There is an order by which you go out. And there is an order by which you find life in the sheepfold. And Jesus is saying, apparently, there are other false shepherds who try to steal God's people by going around the order of the sheepfold. Oh my, have you seen that? I think we're going a little deeper tonight, and we're looking at the true order of the sheepfold. Jesus says, if you are a shepherd, so we're talking to pastors and ministers and church leaders as well as church members tonight. This is very important. We're all in this conversation together. And Jesus had that same group of people before him: leaders, rulers, Pharisees, church folk, not unsaved people, but people of the church of the Pharisee, which was the largest active sect of the Jewish faith in the time of Jesus. And he's talking to them, and he's having a conversation with them about order of the true sheepfold and the true shepherd. And he says, if any man tries to circumvent my order, if he tries to climb up some other way, Jesus said the same is a thief and a robber. And we know what we think about these people. We're not to judge them, but we certainly do not embrace the activities of thieves and robbers. And of course, this is in a spiritual context. Nonetheless, there is something being stolen and destroyed that is valuable to Jesus. And he is setting order here in John chapter 10. And it's important for us to understand, how did we get where we are as a church? How did the institutional church become separate from the incarnational church? That's what Jesus is talking about in this passage. Indeed, he is trying to draw a distinction, because if the salt loses its flavor, what good is it? If we lose our distinctive as the true order of the sheep and shepherds of his sheepfold, what good are we? And indeed, we are classified as thieves and robbers, subverting perverting God's plan, God's order, and God's people. And so the light is shining brightly tonight, and let's see what it is showing us. We do not ever, ever want to go outside of church order. And I could go very deep here, but for sake of time tonight, I just want us to understand it might be really good for you to dig into the order of your church. Look at the foundational order. How is it established? By what method is it guided? What role does Jesus and the Holy Spirit play in the leadership and guidance and the direction and the trajectory of your church? It reminds me of a little funny that I heard recently of a church that was going to have a membership drive. And so they appointed different people in a committee, and as is the way of men, and they assigned each person to go see someone. And so one guy went down the street and met with a neighbor and said, "We'd love for you to join our church." And to his surprise, he said, "I'll pray about it. Come back in 2 weeks, I'll give you the answer." 2 weeks later, the same man from the church came back, knocked on the neighbor's door and said, "I'm here to find out what your answer was. What will you do?" And to his great surprise, the man said, "I want to join your church." And so the church member said, "That's fantastic. You must have prayed about it." And the neighbor said, "I did. And the Lord told me I've been wanting to be a part of that church for a long time, but I've never been invited. So if you've been invited, maybe you should go." You see, there are some churches where they are out of order and they're not being led by the Spirit. They're being led by men and ideas and models that are man-made, man-contrived, man-thought of. And watch this, anything that's man-made serves, number one, the purpose of the institution created by the men who were the builders of the institution. It does not serve the best interest of the follower. But Jesus, being the true shepherd, serves the best interest of the people and gives them life and freedom. This is so easy to see once God opens your eyes.